If you're running a manufacturing operation in Indiana, the developments landing this week come back to two questions every serious operator needs to be asking right now. Where is your power coming from in the next decade, and who is going to be running your equipment when it gets here? Governor Braun just signed a letter of intent with Eli Lilly and the state's Office of Energy Development to explore small modular reactors for baseload industrial power at the LEAP district in Boone County. Incog BioPharma is putting $200 million into a Fishers expansion that will pull nearly 1,000 skilled workers from the central Indiana labor market by 2030. And former Governor Eric Holcomb published a direct argument in Time magazine for why AI will strengthen American manufacturing, and named skilled workers and electrical power as the two variables that determine whether Indiana wins or loses that opportunity. In the next few minutes, I'll walk you through what each of these means and the questions worth putting in front of your team before the week is through. If you operate an energy-intensive manufacturing facility in central Indiana, Governor Braun's letter of intent with Eli Lilly and the Office of Energy Development to explore small modular reactors at the LEAP Research and Innovation District in Lebanon is the most consequential long-term energy story in Indiana right now. Here's what the agreement actually covers. This is a non-binding letter of intent to evaluate the possibility of deploying small modular nuclear reactors and other advanced nuclear technologies, not for medical isotope production, but for base load power for industrial, research, and community uses. The LEAP district is a 9,000 plus acre development in Lebanon, Boone County, where Eli Lilly has announced more than $13 billion in investment across multiple drug manufacturing facilities. Those facilities carry substantial energy loads, and the state is now actively evaluating whether advanced nuclear is the right long-term answer. The agreement assigns Indiana's Office of Energy Development to coordinate with state and federal agencies on policy, permitting, and grid siting work. Eli Lilly's role is to evaluate technologies, provide input on energy demand, and engage in long-term energy procurement discussions. Grid interconnection, infrastructure needs, overall costs, scheduling, and project risks are all on the assessment list. Indiana currently has no commercial nuclear power plants, but this is not the state's first move in that direction. In November, Indiana partnered with reactor startup First American Nuclear, which plans to site its headquarters, manufacturing facilities, and a nuclear power plant in Indiana. On April 15th, 2 days ago, First American Nuclear submitted its regulatory engagement plan for its Eagle 1 small, fast-spectrum reactor to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. So here's what to watch for. Updates from the Indiana Office of Energy Development on grid siting and interconnection assessments. Those documents will tell you how seriously the state is moving and what the cost and timeline picture actually looks like for this. So here are some questions for your team. If baseload nuclear capacity comes online in central Indiana over the next decade, how does that factor into your long-term energy procurement planning for facilities in or near Boone County? If you operate in Hamilton County, or compete for skilled manufacturing talent anywhere in the greater Indianapolis corridor, Incog BioPharma's $200 million expansion in Fishers is a labor market development that runs through the end of this decade. Incog BioPharma is a sterile injectables contract development and manufacturing organization, and this is its third expansion at its Fishers campus. The company is investing approximately $200 million to grow the facility to roughly 300,000 square feet on a 21-acre site. Construction begins in early 2026. By 2030, Incog expects to employ nearly 1,000 people there. CEO Corey Lewis attributed the investment directly to sustained demand from global biopharma partners. Mayor Scott Fadness of Fishers noted that life sciences firms have now committed more than $1 billion in investment to the city. Governor Braun called the expansion another example of Indiana leading in life sciences and advanced manufacturing. The expanded facility will produce up to 480 million injectable units per year, covering sterile fill and finish, automated inspection, device assembly, labeling, sterilization, and final packaging. The roles being created span operations, engineering, quality, and administration. So here's what to watch for. Incog's hiring timeline and which roles they recruit for most aggressively through 2027. Those job categories will tell you exactly which skill sets are becoming most competitive in Hamilton County's labor market over the next 4 years. So here are the questions for your team. Which of the positions Incog BioPharma is filling in Fishers, operations, engineering, quality, administration, overlap with the roles you are most dependent on in your own operation? And what does your retention strategy look like through 2030? Former Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb published a piece in Time magazine in January 2026, making a direct case for why AI will drive an American manufacturing renaissance. And the two concerns he flags as the determining variables are the same two every Indiana plant leader is already used to navigating. Holcomb's argument is built around a Deloitte projection that AI-driven manufacturing will create a net 3.8 million new jobs nationally by 2033. His position? Future factories will employ fewer workers in total, but AI enables the creation of more highly specialized facilities, safer working conditions, and less pressure to offshore production in search of cheaper labor. The net result, he argues, is more U.S. manufacturing facilities producing a wider range of goods, not fewer. The two concerns that dominated every investor conversation during his time as governor were, in his words, the supply of skilled workers and electrical power. In that order, those have not changed. They remain the primary variables that determine whether Indiana captures or misses the next wave of industrial investment. Holcomb also points to data centers as an early signal of what AI manufacturing actually looks like in practice. According to Harvard economist Jason Furman, data centers and associated information processing equipment accounted for 92% of U.S. economic growth in the first half of 2025. On workforce, his framework is clear. AI and digital skills training needs to begin at the secondary school level, with community colleges and vocational technical schools as the backbone of a lifelong learning system for the manufacturing workforce. So here's what to watch for. State and federal education and workforce policy developments that create or close skill pipelines for Indiana manufacturers, and whether Indiana's energy infrastructure investment keeps pace with the industrial load growth that AI-driven manufacturing will place on the grid. We have to watch that closely. So here's a question for your team. Where is AI already creating measurable efficiency gains in your operation today? And what is the gap between your current workforce's capabilities and what you will need to run that operation in 5 years' time? Today, you're looking at 3 stories that all run back to the same 2 constraints: power supply and skilled workers. Indiana is exploring nuclear for the first time in its modern industrial history, specifically to meet the energy demands of a $13 billion pharmaceutical manufacturing district in Boone County. A $200 million life sciences expansion in Fishers is going to absorb nearly 1,000 skilled workers from the central Indiana labor market over the next 4 years. And the state's most recent governor is on record saying that the operators who treat AI as an opportunity and who build the workforce and power infrastructure to support it are the ones who will still be growing in 2033. The bottom line today is Indiana is making concrete moves toward advanced nuclear power for industrial baseload. At the same time, life sciences manufacturers are expanding aggressively in central Indiana, and the operators who are not actively managing their long-term energy procurement strategy and workforce pipeline right now are building exposure into both their cost structure and their production capability for the rest of this decade. Now, obviously, I don't run your plant. You do that. My real job as CEO of Tactical Energy Group is to stay on top of everything that changes the cost and reliability of your power and the economics of making things in Indiana, so we can build the right products and programs for the manufacturing community. But while I'm doing that work anyway, this brief is my way of giving you as much of that insight as I possibly can, so you can spend more time running your operation and less time trying to decode bills, rate cases, and headlines. So let me leave you with 3 questions worth putting on the table before your next week closes out. If your team cannot answer these, you're making long-term capital and workforce decisions without the information your competitors already have on their radar. First, do we have a position on how Indiana's nuclear energy exploration, specifically the Eli Lilly and OED letter of intent at the LEAP district in Lebanon, factors into our long-term energy procurement strategy and any planned capacity expansion in Boone County or central Indiana? Second, Which of the roles Incog BioPharma is recruiting for in Fishers overlap with the positions we are most dependent on? And does our current retention and compensation strategy account for that increased labor market competition in Hamilton County through 2030? Third, where in our operation are we already seeing AI or automation create measurable efficiency gains? And what is the specific skill gap between our current workforce and what we will need to operate at full capacity 5 years from now? If this brief helped you see today's headlines a little more clearly, pass it along to another Indiana operator who should be tracking this ahead of time rather than reacting to it after the fact. I'm Daniel Burke. This is TEG Daily Indiana Manufacturing News, and I will see you on Monday.